Welcome to the show. My name is Tony Kola, and you're watching the Push Liberty Show. And today we're going to be talking about a certain woman who you probably know of, and if you don't know who she is already, don't really know what to say, but because everyone really knows who she is. And she was on the Howard Stern show. And today we're going to be talking about Hillary Rodham Clinton. Here's just a small part where Hillary Clinton is talking about how Trump's inauguration was one of the hardest days of Hillary Clinton's life. Let's see here.
And then he started on that speech, which was so bizarre. And that's when I got really worried. I thought, wait a minute.
This isn't rational.
It's not rational, but it's also it's not politics. It's not what a president does. A president is supposed to try to reach out to people who weren't for him or her. You're supposed to say, okay, I'm going to be the president of everyone, those who supported me and those who didn't, because we're going to pull the country together. I'd hope that I would hear.
Okay, so first of all, he talks about pulling the country together. It's complete bullshit, and she's lying. She doesn't care about getting the people from the other side. All she cares about is the fact that she lost. And here's a clip of Hillary Clinton during the 2016 election. The same election she's talking about, the same inauguration. That was one of the hardest days of her life. Ready?
You know, to just be grossly generalistic, you could put half of Trump's supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
That's so funny.
Right?
Even the way she worded it sounded like something an old person would say, but okay. So she just called half of Trump's entire base a basket of deplorables. Now let's hear what she said again.
A little him or her. A president is supposed to try to reach out to people who weren't for him or her. You're supposed to say, okay, I'm going to be the president of everyone, those who supported me and those who didn't, because we're going to pull the country together. I'd hope that I would hear a little of that. I didn't hear any of that. And then that carnage in the street and the dark dystopian vision.
Carnage in the street and the dark dystopian vision. The carnage in the street wasn't by Trump. The carnage in the street was by people protesting against him. And the fact that she called it carnage, I kind of like where this frame is frozen, but the fact that she called it carnage, she's trying to over-dramatize it. It just sounds ridiculous. It wasn't carnage. I don't remember anyone dying. Then maybe then, if a person died, you can call it carnage. But I would say carnage more of like a massacre. I don't know what she means by that.
I was sitting there like, just wow, couldn't believe it. George W. Bush says to me, well, that was some weird shit.
Wow.
Look at
some
that
weird
face.
Shit.
Wow.
That's not.
Bush says
She's not
to me,
laughing.
well, that
That's
was
not
some
real.
Weird shit.
Wow.
Why does she look so much like a robot?
To me, well, that was some weird shit.
Wow.
You see her face? Watch.
Says to me, well, that was some weird shit.
Wow.
Who opens their eyes that much when they laugh? That's crazy.
Bush says to me, well, that was some weird shit.
Wow.
It's like she's trying to figure out how a human behaves and she just can't. And so here is some of the things Hillary Clinton is responsible for. This is the ambassador in Benghazi that Hillary Clinton was responsible for the death of because she could have prevented it. So I would actually consider this as carnage, over what she's considering as carnage during the inauguration. And it just shows how out of touch she is. She considers Trump's inauguration, carnage and dark and dystopian. Meanwhile, look what she did. Not only this guy, but U.S. soldiers, our own soldiers died because of something she did, because of her incompetence, because of her idea to, her and Obama's idea to kind of play it off like it was over some kind of movie, and it wasn't some kind of attack. And really, they could have defended this man, but they left him on standby. These people were begging for help. Look at him. Look at these people that are holding him, taking him. He's clearly beaten. Look at his body. He's clearly just ruined. Dark dystopian. Look at this. Hillary Clinton calling for a no-fly zone in Syria. This is during the election. Do you know what a no-fly zone in Syria would do? A no-fly zone is essentially exactly what it sounds like. A zone where nobody can fly over. And if the U.S. declares it, I guess the U.S. can fly over it, but other countries can't. So if we declared a no-fly zone in Syria, who has other adversaries there, like Russia and like now China, but not as much militarily, essentially what she's basically saying is that if a Russian jet flies over the zone we say no to, we can shoot them down. We can shoot down a Russian jet. That's what she thinks. That's what she honestly thinks. And it's just crazy to me. Okay, here's another. Okay. And I kind of pull out some videos of John McCain because John McCain, not everyone, I guess, definitely not Trump, a lot of people consider him some kind of war hero. Okay? And he's a Republican. Hillary Clinton's a Democrat. But their foreign policy is so in line that you honestly couldn't really see a difference. John McCain said some pretty nice things about Hillary Clinton before. And John McCain is not a real Republican. He's a rhino. Not that the Republican Party is the greatest party. They're not, definitely not. But I want to play this to kind of give you an example of how similar the two are, even though they're supposed to be polar opposites, according to what their party platforms state.
McCain is also making headlines over the next presidential campaign. The New Republic magazine.
Okay, yeah, sorry. This is a video where John McCain is asked whether he would support Hillary Clinton, or Rand Paul. Rand Paul is probably one of the realest conservatives in the Republican Party. He actually wants to limit the size of the government, unlike someone like John McCain, who wants endless wars and justifies staying in endless wars by bringing up some Yazidis on a mountaintop, 13 fucking people. Meanwhile, he's getting thousands killed, so he's a piece of shit. But Rand Paul actually wants to pull out of the wars. And this is why someone like John McCain doesn't like him, because John McCain has to stand up for the wars. So here is John McCain having to make a choice between Hillary Clinton and Rand Paul in 2016 if Hillary went up against Rand, which obviously didn't happen because Trump kind of destroyed him, but I like Rand Paul. So here is clip.
Asked him who he would support in 2016 if Democrat Hillary Clinton faced Republican Senator Rand Paul. The 2008 GOP nominee laughed and said, "It's going to be a tough choice." McCain and Paul have butted heads a few times in the Senate. In the interview, McCain praised Clinton's work as Secretary of State and called her a rock star.
Okay, so he said it's going to be a tough choice. How is it a tough choice between Hillary Clinton and Rand Paul if Rand Paul is the only actual conservative between those two choices? And John McCain clearly doesn't stand up for what the conservatives want, which I'd say there is a debate in the conservative movement of socialism. What do you mean by that? Sorry, I just saw that. But there is a debate in the conservative movement between people that think conservatism is more of traditionalism and people that think conservatism is more on small government. Socialism, I'm against socialism. How about you? But yeah, there's a debate going on whether the Conservative Party is really about smaller government, spending less, or whether the Conservative Party is about traditionalism, preserving the past. And I don't really know exactly where to stand on that yet, but I know there's a debate of that going on. But if John McCain in this clip has a choice between
McCain and Paul have butted heads a few times
conservative,
in the Senate.
I agree, by the way, fuck socialism.
In the interview,
if he has a choice between a fiscally conservative candidate and Hillary fucking Clinton, this is what he says. He says it's a tough choice.
McCain and Paul have butted heads a few times in the Senate. In the interview, McCain praised Clinton's work as Secretary of State and called her a rock star.
He called her a rock star. If you think Hillary Clinton's a rock star, you're retarded. Here is another clip of John McCain, the war hero. He's such a great man. He's so honorable. He's so honorable. He just sends other people's children to war. So honorable. But here is a clip of him referring to some stuff Senator Paul said. And Rand Paul is anti-war. Rand Paul wants to pull out of the wars because they're endless wars. We've wasted trillions of dollars on these wars. Thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. But we've wasted trillions of dollars on these wars. And the Zoomers, Generation Z, of all generations, hates these wars because we grew up seeing our brothers, our fathers, our sisters, whatever, getting sent to war and seeing them come back all messed up with PTSD, among other things. And people don't want war anymore. So here is what John McCain says about people that don't want war, people that want to pull out of the Middle East, because we've essentially made it worse. We've created terrorists that hate us. You're a millennial? Oh, nice. Are you anti-war? I'll read your answer after, but I'm just going to play this video.
Montenegro Treaty Document 114-12, that the treaty be considered as having advanced through the various parliamentary stages up to and including the presentation of the resolution of ratification, that any committee declarations be agreed to as applicable, that there be no amendments in order to the treaty or the resolution of ratification.
I might have played the wrong part of this
2
video.
hours for debate, equally divided in the usual, except that I will say the objectives of Vladimir Putin. And I note the senator from Kentucky on the floor. I will say before I read this, if there's objection, you are achieving the objectives of Vladimir Putin. You're achieving the objectives of trying to dismember this small country that has already been the subject of attempted coup. I have no idea why anyone would object to this, except that I will say, if they object, they are now carrying out the desires and ambitions of Vladimir Putin, and I do not say that lightly. So, Mr. President,
many of us will be fighting a civil war in this country, however. I can definitely see it heading that way for sure. But John McCain just said that anyone who's opposed to interventionism, to going to these wars, to fighting other people's battles instead of taking care of Americans first, instead of being America first, anyone who's against this is essentially working for Vladimir Putin, is a Russian agent. He's calling them a traitor. So he's saying if you oppose the wars, if you oppose intervention, you're a traitor. That's what John McCain is saying. And really, he says it in this McCain can rot and piss. The best part is he is, right? And here is some information about John McCain. Why would he believe these things, right? Why would he want to send people to war if he's not going to send his children? Okay? And here's John McCain, where he gets his money from. Okay? So here's Pinnacle West Capital. So total 112,000, individuals 72,000, PACs 40,000. What is Pinnacle West Capital? An Arizona Public Service Company is the largest electric utility in Arizona, United States. principal subsidiary. So it's a giant electric company, okay? And one of his other donors is the Blackstone Group. The Blackstone Group is an American multinational private equity, alternative asset management, and financial services firm based in New York City as the largest alternative investment firm in the world. Blackstone specializes in private equity, credit, and hedge fund investment strategies. So John McCain is in bed with bankers, okay? And that's not even the worst part. What is NORPAC? NORPAC. I don't know if that's how you say it. NORPAC is a bipartisan, multi-candidate political action committee working to strengthen the United States-Israel relationship. To strengthen the United States-Israel relationship. So we should be going to war with other countries to strengthen the United States-Israel relationship. John McCain is getting money from these people. And what is McAndrews and Forbes? Okay? Andrews and Forbes Incorporated is an American diversified holding company wholly owned by billionaire investor Ron Perelman. Current investments include leading participants across a wide range of industries, from cosmetics and entertainment to biotechnology and military equipment. Military equipment. John McCain is getting money from people who sell or invested in military equipment. Is this not some kind of sign, some kind of red flag that John McCain might want war for the wrong reasons? He doesn't want to protect the 13 Yazidis on the mountaintop in Afghanistan. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's because he gets money from these people. So he's just a horrible person. Tries to call someone that's anti-war, someone that's a good person whose father is Ron Paul. He calls Rand Paul an asset of Vladimir Putin. He just calls him a Russian spy, which is ridiculous. And here's another one. Saudi Arabia gave $1 million to the McCain Institute. If you're taking money from Saudi Arabia, you're already in the wrong. And that also kind of shows another reason of why he's in the Middle East, not just for Israel, but for Saudi Arabia. And Israel and Saudi Arabia have a really close relationship. And it seems like John McCain doesn't want to help the Yazidis on the mountaintop. In fact, he's killed thousands of people in the Middle East that are innocent. And all because of receiving donations from people like Saudi Arabia, Israel, from people invested in military equipment. And this is clearly not something that we want in a politician. It's not something that the Republican Party wants if you're a Republican. And it shows that Israel and Saudi Arabia use America as their Rottweiler. Glaring Husky said that. Yeah, I agree. We're basically their private military. They essentially send us wherever they want. And especially since we got off the gold standard, Saudi Arabia has been able to leverage us with oil so easily. Once we got off the gold standard, we moved to the petrodollar. Nixon took us off the gold standard, moved us to the petrodollar, and made a deal with Saudi Arabia where if anyone buys oil from Saudi Arabia, they have to first convert the currency that they use to buy the oil to a U.S. currency. And once that currency is converted to U.S. currency and they buy the oil, Saudi Arabia then uses the U.S. dollars and puts them back into our economy and kind of leverages that. And so Saudi Arabia has a lot of power over our politicians. Israel does as well because they have a lot of, super PACs and stuff like that, organizations basically fighting to keep the United States in the Middle East, our people in the Middle East. They want to keep Americans in the Middle East. They don't want to fight their own wars. Israel, with one of the most powerful militaries on the planet, they have hundreds of nukes. They can't fight their own wars, apparently. They need us. They need our blood. They need our kids. So, here's some more about John McCain. The John McCain Institute, funded by George Soros and Saudi Arabia, exposed. Okay. The McCain Institute for International... Okay, let's see how... Daily Caller investigative group has learned that in 2012, McCain turned over nearly $9 million in unspent funds from his failed 2008 presidential campaign to a new... First of all, he failed he lost against Obama. Okay, and which is just, I don't know which one would have been worse, to be honest. But spent nearly $9 million in unspent funds from his failed 2008 presidential campaign to a new foundation bearing his name, the McCain Institute for International Leadership. The McCain Institute for International Leadership's mission is to serve as a legacy for John McCain and is dedicated to advancing human rights, dignity, democracy, and freedom. And look at those buzzwords he uses: human rights, dignity, democracy, freedom. I didn't know he took money from Soros. No wonder he was such a never-Trumper. Exactly. And now, I think if people just follow the money, they really see what these politicians think. Because the politicians are never going to... Sometimes they'll say exactly what they're thinking, but in really subversive ways. But really, when you find where the money is coming from, you know exactly what they want. And so, John McCain, he's using these words for his institute like they're dedicated to advancing human rights, dignity, democracy, and freedom. Really think about how the wars are pushed in the Middle East. We're spreading democracy. And essentially, they've conflated the word democracy with the word freedom. And we're not, when we go over there and we spread democracy, we're not really spreading democracy, freedom. We're not advancing human rights or dignity. We're killing innocent people. And 1 year while Obama was president, he dropped so many bombs, I think 27,000 bombs, to the point where the Air Force ran out of bombs. Google the story, Air Force runs out of bombs, and you will find this. It's true. It's true. It's hard to believe, but it's true. He dropped so many bombs, killed so many people, that we ran out of bombs. The United States military ran out of bombs. So these people are horrible people, warmongers. They have no dignity. They don't care about human rights, and they don't care about freedom. And so the Institute is a tax-exempt nonprofit foundation and has assets valued at $8.1 million associated with Arizona State University. Bloomberg reported in 2016 on a $1 million Saudi Arabian donation to the Institute. So Saudi Arabia donated to his institute. The McCain Institute to date has refused to publicly explain the Saudi Arabian Saudi Arabian $1 million contribution. The McCain Institute's donor list gets even more nefarious with more digging, as revealed by the Daily Caller, linking McCain to regime change globalists like George Soros. So, critics worry that the Institute's donors and McCain's, I think this is from, the Daily Caller. Critics worry that the Institute's donors and McCain's personal leadership in the organization's exclusive Sedona Forum bear an uncanny resemblance to the glitzy Clinton Global Initiative, the annually commingled special interests and powerful political players in alleged pay-to-play schemes. So when people praise Hillary Clinton for how many countries she's visited, she's not visiting those countries to help us, to help relations. She's visiting those countries because she's involved in pay-to-play schemes. They're paying her money, her foundation money, the Clinton Global Initiative. They're paying it money. So then when she gets into office or her husband gets into office, they can do what those countries pay them to do. And they are owned by other people. So McCain and Soros reportedly became friends after the senator was exposed as a member of the Keating Five during the savings and loan, the S&L industry scandal, during former President George H.W. Bush's administration. As the S&L Bank chairman, Charles Keating paid $1.3 million to bribe 5 members of Congress to interfere with government regulators on behalf of the savings bank. The experience so scarred McCain that he became a vigorous advocate of campaign finance reform and in the process reportedly became friends with Soros. Check it out. John McCain. 2020 election is the key to the future of America. 100%, I agree. And really, I think a lot of people are under the impression, I think there's two subsets of people. One group is under the impression that after the Trump presidency, everything can go back to normal, or at least what normal is in their head. And other people think that once the Trump presidency is over, things are going to stay this way. And I fall more under that, where I think Trump definitely fundamentally changed something about the way we look at politics. And it could be for better or it could be for worse. I happen to believe it's for the better. But here's John McCain with George Soros. And I don't really like taking a picture of someone with someone else and kind of using the guilt by association trick. But after seeing that he was friends with Soros in the past, took money from Soros, it makes a lot of sense. It's not really grasping for straws here. So what is this now? Due to a coordinated attack. Okay, fuck you. Okay, look at this. John McCain accused of accepting improper donations from Rothschilds. Great people, right? Everyone loves the Rothschilds. We all love rich bankers. They're our favorite people. And this was revealed by WikiLeaks. Let's see. Since June 2002, Lady de Rothschild has been the chief executive of E.L. Rothschild LLC. Trump inspired the silent majority to draw a line in the sand and not back down to those who seek to destroy our nation. Trump definitely inspired a lot of people to fight for what they believe in. I definitely agree with that. And to kind of realize what the threat is. I think he kind of exposed corruption in not to in the way of that it's just the government in general that's corrupt. And I think it's really it woke a lot of people up, but not enough. And I think this upcoming election is going to do more. And what annoys me a lot is how people think that, especially the left, think that Trump is the only politician that's ever been corrupt. What corruption started in 2016. Obviously, corruption didn't start in 2016. And this is how they like to paint the picture, that Trump is the reason corruption is around. No, there's a reason why Hillary Clinton lost the election. Because, first of all, the email scandal, which in itself is corruption, and nobody trusted her. If you trust Hillary Clinton, you really need to reevaluate your life and put it into perspective. Really look into what she's saying, what she's done. Really bad things. And let's see what this says. I don't know. I kind of don't feel like going through this. I'm just going to move on. And then here's Robert Mueller, the man that championed the case of corruption against Trump. The honorable agent supposed to be investigating Trump for collusion with Russia. Here is Robert Mueller, one of the people responsible for the war in Iraq, and Trump campaigned with anti-war rhetoric. He hasn't done as much as he could right now, but he campaigned with an anti-war message. And this is stuff that the deep state really doesn't like, and that corrupt officials in the government, war profiteers, people like John McCain really don't like. Maybe that's why John McCain doesn't like Trump so much. And like Glaring Husky said earlier, but Robert Mueller on Iraq war and WMDs. Robert Mueller peddled this lie. Look at him.
As Director Tenet has pointed out, Secretary Powell presented evidence last week that Baghdad has failed to disarm its weapons of mass destruction, willfully attempting to evade and deceive the international community. Our particular concern is that Saddam Hussein may supply terrorists with biological, chemical, or radiological material. Powell presented evidence last week that Baghdad has failed to disarm its weapons of mass destruction.
Baghdad has failed to disarm its weapons of mass destruction. And remember, after we already invaded Iraq, it all turned out to be a lie, and Robert Mueller is part of this lie. Wouldn't it really surprise you if Robert Mueller is still fucking lying? Obviously, Robert Mueller is still lying. it's just I hate when people try to paint people like the FBI and the CIA as good guys. These are not good guys. And this only happened since Trump was elected. Because as soon as Trump started railing on the intelligence community, which was hilarious, and I think we really needed it, the whole mainstream media goes on this tirade about how Trump isn't trusting the intelligence communities. They're such honorable people. The people at the FBI and the CIA are such honorable people. And that's just absolutely ridiculous. The FBI is responsible for horrible things. They've ruined people's lives. They've had people followed, all kinds of stuff that would really, really make a lot of people sick if they knew about. And so this is an old clip, but it's the Clinton and Obama debate. And this is just another clip to kind of demonstrate how much these people are just liars, and how much they don't really care about the truth at all, and how much they're still talking about the same issues. Just look at the way Clinton and Obama treat each other here as compared to in different situations.
When Senator Clinton or President Clinton asserts that I said that the Republicans had better economic policies since 1980. That is not the case.
It is sometimes difficult to understand what Senator Obama has said, because as soon as he is confronted on it, he says that's not what he meant. The facts are that he has said in the last week that he really liked the ideas of the Republicans over the last 10 to 15 years.
That is not true. What I said, and I will provide you with the quote, what I said is that Ronald Reagan was a transformative political figure because he was able to get Democrats to vote against their economic interests to form a majority to push through their agenda, an agenda that I objected to, because while I was working on those streets, watching those folks see their jobs shipped overseas, you were a corporate lawyer sitting on the board of Walmart. I was fighting these fights.
You talked about Ronald Reagan being a transformative political leader. I did not mention his name.
Your husband did.
Well, I'm here. He's not.
Okay, well, I can't tell who I'm running against sometimes.
That was pretty slick on Obama's part, not gonna lie.
I think we both have very passionate and committed spouses who stand up for us, and I'm proud of that. But
Stop.
I think we both have very passionate and committed spouses who stand up for us, and I'm proud of that. But you also
We're all good people.
About the Republicans having ideas over the last 10 to 15 years.
I didn't say they were good ones.
Well, you can read the context of it.
Well,
it certainly
I didn't
came
say
across.
They were good ones.
Well, it certainly came across in the way that it was presented, as though the Republicans had been standing up against the conventional wisdom with their ideas. I'm just reacting to the fact, yes, they did have ideas, and they were bad ideas, bad for America. And I was fighting against those ideas when you were practicing law and representing your contributor, Resco, in his slum landlord business in inner city Chicago.
No.
He fucks anything with the pulse. Yeah, he does. Yeah, so yeah, Bill Clinton is a straight up sexual predator. It's so obvious. He's allegedly, I don't want anyone to fucking sue me, but he's a straight up sexual predator. And I remember during the 2016 election, I can never find this clip anymore, but during the 2016 election, I wasn't really that into politics, but I remember scrolling through YouTube, just kind of going down a rabbit hole and finding a clip of Bill Clinton campaigning for Hillary Clinton during the 2016 election. And he just grabbed this lady and just started making out with her. And it was just unbelievable that didn't get more coverage. And now it seems like it's just wiped from YouTube. I can't even find it. It might be on BitChute or something. This BitChute doesn't ban people. And I'm on BitChute too, if you want to follow me on there. It's like YouTube. But let's see. I've kind of forgot why I put this clip up, so I'm just kind of gonna play it.
This is video from the scene of that chopper set on fire by the SEAL team, forced to leave it behind. The operation only became public after Osama bin Laden was killed.
You really didn't tell President Clinton about Osama bin Laden?
No. No, I mean, I take very seriously the obligations of secrecy.
But didn't he say, you could have told me?
Well, no, because he understood. And when President Obama called to tell him, I think the president started by saying something, well, I assume Hillary's told you. And he goes, told me what? You know?
But even as Clinton promotes a book about...
I stood. And when President Obama...
You could have told me.
Well, no, because he understood. And when... I mean, I take very seriously the obligations of secrecy.
But didn't he...
I take very seriously the obligations of secrecy. I mean, I take very seriously the obligations of secrecy. And I mean,
I take very seriously the obligations of secrecy. Watch this. She takes them so seriously. Wow. Putting classified emails on a private server. She takes very seriously the implications of security. She takes it very seriously. Here's this article. This is from the New York Times. This says 22 of her emails contained highly classified information. And then there were some 18 emails exchanged between her and Obama that they're saying weren't classified. I mean, really, how can you even believe them after the investigation just went to shambles that way? They changed one word in the report that Comey made about her from grossly negligent, which could have been a crime, to, I forgot the other word. Damn it. Yeah, but here's someone who's not absolutely horrible and who calls out people like Hillary Clinton, John McCain, for being fake patriots, for not really caring about freedom, for not really caring about human rights. This is Jacob Hornberger, and this is just a really great clip, so I have to play it.
They say it comes from their so-called war on terror, a war in which they converted a criminal act, terrorism, which is listed in the U.S. Code as a crime, which is why they've prosecuted people for terrorism for eons. But simply through their announcement that this crime was now converted into an act of war, they say that gave them these omnipotent powers. And they have emphasized from the get-go that this is a global war on terror. It's not just limited to Yemen and Pakistan or Africa or Latin America or Europe, that the entire world is the battlefield. And in that message is that right here in the United States, which they say is the primary target of the terrorists, this global war on terror encompasses.
And that is the truth. When they say a global war on terror, they don't mean everyone besides the United States. The United States is within the globe. And so this is an issue that a lot of people don't take seriously enough. The wars. The wars are the most important issue. There are people dying. We're losing so many of our resources and people fighting these wars for other interests, for Saudi Arabia, for Israel, and for people like John McCain to line up their fucking pockets with money.
A few years ago, they took an American into custody. They turned him over to the military. When he said, I want a lawyer, they said, you don't get no lawyer. This is America. You're an enemy of this country. You don't get a trial either, because we have the authority to hold you for the rest of your life under a life sentence with no trial.
That's
because you're an enemy.
Act.
And we get to make that determination in this new world order. They tortured him using techniques that the CIA and the military had acquired from the North Korean communists, who had used them so effectively against American prisoners of war, turning their minds into mush and making them confess to crimes they had never committed. Sensory deprivation, goggles, sound suppressors, isolation, what they call touchless torture. But what was most important about this was not just that particular case, but the message that was sent to every American. We not only have the authority to do this to this man, we have the authority to do this to every American. And this mindset was reflected when they assassinated an American traveling in Yemen several years ago, post 9/11, traveling in a car where they just took him out. This mindset was reflected most recently in the case of the...
So they blew up an American in Yemen with no trial. Obviously, he had no trial because they exploded him. They shot him with a drone. An American citizen was shot with a drone in Yemen, and there was no consequence because the global war on terror, that's what it means. Americans are included. As long as they label you a terrorist, you are involved in this war, and you do not have rights at that point. So when John McCain says we need to stop terrorism and in order to fight for human rights, dignity, and freedom, none of that makes any sense, and it all contradicts what he's really doing. And here's some more.
Detroit, the alleged Detroit bomber, where the statists, both liberals and conservatives, were saying, turn him over to the military. He's an enemy. He's caught on the battlefield here in the United States. Torture him. Do whatever's necessary to make him talk. In other words, what the statists did to Randy Weaver's wife when they put that bullet right into her forehead as she held her baby and was unarmed at Ruby Ridge, Idaho. What they did to Randy Weaver's
terrorist, to be honest. I know, sometimes I feel the same
son
thing.
When they shot him in the back.
Who isn't a terrorist? Well, what is a terrorist anyways now? Because according to John McCain, if you don't support the war on terror, you support Vladimir Putin, a whole different country. So I think John McCain would probably label me and you as terrorists.
Indeed, what they did to those Branch Davidians at Waco when they injected that flammable gas into that building that had all those children in it, and then bulldozed the entire site so that there could not be an investigation.
These are all things that our government has done to Americans. We are not safe. The war on terror is not making us safer. It's only putting us in more danger. And this is a message that a lot of people, I think a lot of Americans are starting to understand that we shouldn't be in these wars, but I don't think they understand why. And because being anti-war should be an easy position to defend. But when people are calling you an isolationist for not wanting to go to war in the Middle East and fight somebody else's war, you're not an isolationist. You're a non-interventionalist. And an isolationist would be a country like North Korea, who doesn't really interact with other countries. They are an isolationist. They don't really trade with other countries. They are an isolationist. Meanwhile, we just because we're not fighting other people's wars and getting our own people killed for it, it doesn't mean we're isolationists. It means we're non-interventionalists. We still want to trade with people. We still want to make our country stronger through trade, through good relationships. And I think a lot of people are just sick of the wars. But I don't think they know why. And if they had somebody explain why, I think a lot of people would be on the anti-war side and would stop defending people like John McCain, Hillary Clinton, and others.
They can now do legally and with impunity to anyone they want as long as they label him a terrorist. And don't think that anybody's going to be suing. The survivors are going to be suing like Randy Weaver did when he secured a settlement from the federal government for doing that to his family. Because the courts are holding that now in this new world order, this has implications of national security. And they're never, ever going to force the CIA to reveal the identity of its assassins. I ask you, how can you...
Sounds kind of like how they're not trying to force the CIA to reveal the identity of the whistleblower that's accusing Trump of the Ukraine stuff. And the whistleblower is obviously a CIA asset. He's completely political, and he didn't even witness the conversation. It's all hearsay. And a Democrat during the impeachment hearing actually said, they really said with a clear mind, that sometimes hearsay is better than evidence. That's so ridiculous. I'm not even going to begin to explain that. Look into it.
Possibly reconcile the principles of a free society when you live in a society in which the government's got the omnipotent power to torture, rendition, kidnap, detain indefinitely, deny trials, and even assassinate people in that jurisdiction. That's the threat of the warfare state. Over here, you've got the threat of the welfare state. The seeds for this socialist system were planted at the turn of the 20th century when the so-called progressives were importing their socialist ideas primarily from the German socialists. The big revolution, of course, came in the Franklin Roosevelt administration when the primary purpose of government became to take money from those who were producing it in order to give it to those who did not produce it. But the big jugular vein for this thing, sounds
like something Bernie Sanders wants, right?
Twin jugular vein for the welfare state as well as the warfare state came in the 1910s. For that was when they instituted this twin jugular vein of the income tax and the Federal Reserve System, through which the nurture, the food, the money would be funneled through to fund what is about to come. The socialistic welfare state and, of course, the warfare state. They've got the most brutal, the most vicious agency, or at least one of them, enforcing this income tax, the Internal Revenue Service. You know, it's kind of amusing when they were talking about that guy that flew his plane into the building there in Austin, the IRS building. The statists, both liberals and conservatives, were talking about, you know, how angry he was and how frustrated he was, and they were sort of mocking him and so forth. Now,
Nazi Germany, definitely, anyone who says Nazi Germany didn't at least have socialistic aspects to it is just wrong. Hitler, in order to win the election that he entered, he needed to name his party the National Socialist Party because Germany was in the midst of a lot of communists and socialists trying to take it over. And so in order to blend in, he called it National Socialism, but actually advocated for a lot of policies that they did too. And a lot of people don't know that, but it's in the, you know why they don't know that? Because the name Nazi, because people think of them as Nazis, not National Socialists. And that's what Nazi stands for, National Socialist.
Not one single statist wrote any article on what it is, the horrific things that this vicious agency does to people that drives them into doing a murder-suicide. And it's not the first time. There's countless people that have committed suicide because of the liens, the harassments, the audits, the endless letters, the visitations at workplaces, the haranguing of the children, the garnishments, all without judicial process. Because you see, the statists can't stand the thought of questioning this agency. This is their lifeblood. This is what funds their machine, their deity.
The whole machine is funded by our taxes. Everything they're doing against our will is funded by us. And that's just, to me, is one of the worst parts. Especially the income tax. The income tax is criminal, in my opinion. Because I don't like taxes in general, but the income tax specifically it regards your work, your labor, something you worked for, and you shouldn't have that tax. When someone gets a check and it's cut in half from what it's supposed to be, that's criminal. That's very criminal. That sounds like something the mob would do. You work and you give them some of your money so that they can what? Protect you? When they're obviously not protecting you. They're the ones putting you in danger. That's what the government does to us with the income tax and others.
Consider it heretical.
Yep, but lefties and other political streams blame capitalism for the Nazis. Yeah, what are you going to do about those people, right? Those people, don't exactly know. A lot of people, I saw that actually today. I was watching a video and someone was blaming capitalism for, and the argument was so, it was structured so badly. But here's a clip. This is, to me, is one of the most important clips that exist if you're trying to explain to someone why we shouldn't be in the wars in the Middle East that are not ending. They're the longest wars in American history, and a whole generation has grown up with their family members being sent and coming back all fucked up from. And here's a great clip, one of the best clips I've ever seen.
Let's go to you, Speaker Gingrich. Recently, Dr. Paul.
This is during the election with Mitt Romney, Ron Paul, and all of them in 2012, I think.
Referred to you as a chicken hawk because you didn't serve. Given what you just heard Governor Perry say about understanding the military and Dr. Paul's comments, how do you respond?
Well, Dr. Paul makes a lot of comments. It's part of his style. My father served 27 years in the Army in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. I grew up in a military family moving around the world. Since 1979, I've spent 32 years working.
Going forward, just keep in mind how often he says, I grew up in a military family. As if it means something.
Starting with the Army's Training and Doctrine Command. I was the longest serving teacher in the senior military for 23 years. I served in the Defense Policy Board. But let me say something about veterans, because as an Army brat whose family was deeply engaged, I feel for veterans. We had a great meeting today in Wolfboro with veterans. And I made a commitment in New Hampshire that we would reopen the hospital in Manchester. We would develop a new clinic in the North Country using telecommunications, and we would provide a system where veterans could go to their local doctor or their local
Ron
hospital.
Paul's
the idea
response.
That a veteran in the North Country in midwinter has to go all the way to Boston is absolutely, totally, fundamentally wrong. And I would say, as an Army brat who watched his...
Who got called a chicken hawk? Ron Paul called the guy on the screen right now, Newt Gingrich, a chicken hawk for ducking the wars at the same time as advocating for the current wars. So when he had the chance to go to war, he didn't. That's basically the point. So Ron Paul called him a chicken hawk, and they're asking Newt Gingrich about it. And watch the way the moderator frames the question to Ron Paul, as if Ron Paul should apologize to him. So it just goes to show how the media is in on this and all the wars. Just watch.
His mother, his sisters, and his father for 27 years. I have a pretty good sense of what military families and veterans families need.
Congressman Paul, would you say that again? Would you use that phrase again?
Would you say that again? Would you use that phrase again?
Yeah, I think people who don't serve when they could and they get 3 or 4 or even 5 deferments aren't. They have no right to send our kids off to war and not be even against the wars that we have. I'm trying to stop the wars, but at least, I went when they called me up. But, the veterans problem is a big one. We have hundreds of thousands coming back from these wars that were undeclared. They were unnecessary. They haven't been won. They're unwinnable. We have hundreds of thousands looking for care. And we have an epidemic of suicide coming back. And so many have, if you add up all the contractors and all the wars going on in Afghanistan and in Iraq, we've lost 8,500 Americans and severe injuries, over 40,000. And these are undeclared wars. So Rick keeps saying you don't want this libertarian stuff, but what I'm talking about, I don't bring up the word, you do, but I talk about the Constitution. The Constitution has rules, and I don't like it when we send our kids off to fight these wars, and when those individuals didn't go themselves, and then come up and when they're asked, they say, oh, I don't think one person could have made a difference. I have a pet peeve that annoys me to a great deal, because when I see these young men coming back, my heart weeps for them.
Speaker Gingrich.
Well, Dr. Paul has a long history of saying things that are inaccurate and false.
Literally him saying that Dr. Paul has a long history of saying things that are inaccurate and false is inaccurate and false in itself. So he's a complete retard.
The fact is, I never asked for deferment. I was married with a child. It was never a question. My father was, in fact, serving in Vietnam.
So that's the key part.
With a child. It was never a question.
He said he was married with a child. It was never in the question of whether he should go to war. And then watch Ron Paul's response.
My father was, in fact, serving in Vietnam in the Mekong Delta at the time he's referring to. I think I have a pretty good idea of what it's like as a family to worry about your father getting killed, and I personally resent the kind of comments and aspersions he routinely makes without accurate information and then just slurs people with.
I need one quick follow-up. When I was drafting, I was married and had 2 kids, and I went.
I wasn't eligible for the draft.
I wasn't eligible for the draft. He said, I wasn't eligible for the draft. He just cooked him so hard. Hold on.
Without accurate information and then just slurs people with.
I need one quick follow-up. When I was drafting, I was married and had 2 kids, and I went.
I wasn't eligible for the draft.
There you go. He had 2 kids, and he was married, and he went. And he's not advocating for wars. Today, he's not advocating for wars. He's against the wars. But someone like Newt Gingrich, who avoided service and is still advocating for wars, someone like that is just complete trash. Like, how could you even have those 2 thoughts and not really see the irony in that? You're willing to send other people to war, but you're not willing to go yourself. And why is he willing to send other people to war? Money. Because Newt Gingrich as well has interests in Saudi Arabia, Israel. So he's going to war for other people, just like John McCain, like we were looking at earlier. John McCain receives $1 million from Saudi Arabia. He got money from George Soros, and he got money from an organization that advocates for a good relationship between the United States and Israel. And what does that imply? Or what does that include? That includes the United States defending Israel for their interests, not our interests. Our people are dying for them. Our people are dying for Israel. Our people are dying for Saudi Arabia. Our people are dying for people like Newt Gingrich and people like John McCain and people like Hillary Clinton and people like Obama, when really we shouldn't be there in the first place. And this isn't even the worst. The worst part is obviously the American lives that are being lost. But think about the trillions of dollars that we spent overseas that could have been spent here at home domestically, making our lives better. If the government is going to spend outrageously the way it is, have $1 trillion deficit, spend $1 trillion over our budget and add that to the debt, if we're going to spend so recklessly, why are we spending it on wars that are in the interest of other countries? And some of those countries, like Saudi Arabia, are known for horrific human rights violations, like stoning people to death, killing gays, which it's just ridiculous. I think it's outrageous. And Ron Paul demolished Newt Gingrich in this. And I think if people see clips like this, they can really start to understand why the wars are so detrimental to our lives. It's not just that the wars are bad for the people in the Middle East that we're killing. It's that the wars are detrimental to us too. And if, like Ron Paul said, 8,500 Americans were killed. 8,500. 8,500 is not a small number. The reason we went to war in the first place, and not including the weapons of mass destruction, is because 3,000 people were killed in 9/11. So is 8,500 lives, 40,000 injuries40,000 the exchange? Is that a good exchange? Is that worth it to lose 8,500 people and 40,000 injuries compared to 3,000 deaths? We're doing something wrong. We went and think about how Saudi Arabia, this country that John McCain wants to go to war for, Saudi Arabia is one of the main culprits behind 9/11. I'm talking about the wars in the Middle East and people like Newt Gingrich who are advocating for the wars in the Middle East, even though they're not willing to fight themselves, or they're willing to send us and waste all of our money. Here, I was looking at these earlier, if you missed it, of John McCain calling an anti-war senator, Senator Rand Paul. I don't know if you know who that is, but Senator Rand Paul. Here's the quote down here. One second, let me pull it up. So the senator for Kentucky, Rand Paul, is now working for Vladimir Putin. Why is he working for Vladimir Putin in John McCain's crazy mind? He's working for Vladimir Putin, apparently, because he doesn't want to go to war in the Middle East for countries like Saudi Arabia and Israel. He doesn't want to go to war for countries like Saudi Arabia and Israel and get our people killed for their fights. So he is working for Vladimir Putin, according to John McCain. And really think about the implications of that accusation. Really think about if someone accused you of working for Vladimir Putin, and really all you wanted to do was help save American lives. I turned off American politics a long time ago. Too much childish back and forth. I agree, there is a lot of childish back and forth, but I think it's worth it to kind of try to explain to people why they should try to see through the weeds. And I think the most unifying issue in America could potentially be the wars. And because there's so much cost to the wars. There's thousands of people dying all the time. And I mentioned this earlier. I don't know if you were in the stream when I said it, but during Barack Obama's presidency, there was a year where he dropped 28,000 bombs, and the United States Air Force ran out of bombs. If the United States Air Force ran out of bombs, and the percentage of people that we killed, some of the estimates are 90% innocent. Drone strikes, all those things, 90% of the casualties are innocent. Thousands of innocent people killed. And it doesn't really matter. It's for oil, it's for money, it's for John McCain's donors. Right here, John McCain's donors. Whereas Multi-Candidate Political Action Committee working to strengthen the United States-Israel relationship, NORPAC. Here's NORPAC right here, $77,300. Saudi Arabia gave $1 million to McCain Institute. And then, of course, all these banks, electric companies. John McCain is totally fighting for our freedom. He's fighting for the people, right? And I can't stand when people try to use his service in Vietnam as some kind of leg to stand on. I don't care if he served in Vietnam. Imagine making the argument that all right, I don't believe this, obviously, but imagine someone making the argument that what Hitler did wasn't wrong because he served for Germany in World War I. He was a veteran. He was a war hero, right? So if he's a war hero, he can do no wrong after. That's what they say about John McCain, and it's a huge pet peeve of mine. And here's a clip, actually, I'm about to pull it up right now, of Madeleine Albright, who was the Secretary of State of the United States during the 90s, during the Bill Clinton administration, while we were still in the Middle East, by the way. And so, Madeleine, how do you spell her name? Okay.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
500,000 Iraqi children dying is worth it. She just said that. She's a Secretary of State. Does anybody see that as off? It definitely sounds off to me. Imagine somebody who's supposed to be creating better relations with other countries, like the Secretary of State, saying that killing 500,000 Iraqi children from sanctions was worth it. What was it worth? The only thing that did is make Iraqi families hate us. All it did was create terrorists. The same thing goes with bombing them. The more bombs we drop, like the 27,000 Obama dropped that one year when he ran out of bombs, all those bombs dropped killed innocent people. those innocent people were brothers to people, were fathers to people, were sons to people, were daughters to people, were mothers to people, were sisters to people, and they died. Imagine your brother getting killed, your mom getting killed, someone in your family getting killed from some foreign country that you've never been to. You would think of that country as an enemy. So when we kill 500,000 children in Iraq in the 90s, and then 9/11 happens, like it's some kind of big surprise to us, because people like Madeleine Albright say that it's worth it to kill 500,000 people. Is it worth it to kill 500,000 people? For what? To spend $10 trillion in Afghanistan, and now we're in a worse place than we were when we got there? That's not worth it at all. And so I'm going to go back to this Jacob Hornberger speech. And here he's still talking about, I think, the warfare state or the welfare state. But they go hand in hand because they both come from the same money.
See, everything the IRS does is considered normal and rational and reasonable. We're not supposed to question that. You see, here's how the whole process works. Everybody is over here paying their income taxes all year long. You know, whether it's employer or estimated taxes, and April 15th, we're making up the difference soon. But what's happening is you've got this gigantic fund of money that's being funneled through this jugular vein into Washington. Now, this is a dream come true for a statist. I mean, he's got this gigantic pool of cash ready to distribute in largesse to, you know...
Welfare is designed to create a society of hopeless dependence, aka pawns. I agree. I think welfare it really just makes people dependent on it. And as this might be an anecdotal example, but there's someone I know that runs he runs the kind of urban development around where I live, and he even said himself that most of the people on these welfare payments, getting these public housing, they never get off them, because if you're being told that you're going to get $1,000 a month, that's just an example, I don't know the exact number, but if you're being told that you're going to get $1,000 a month, but if you get a job that goes down to $400 a month, how likely are you to get a job? How likely are you to get a job if really that's really disincentivizing people to work? And it may seem harsh to a certain extent, but really, by not creating a dependency, you're helping people in the long run. And usually people smear this view as not caring about poor people. But say that is, I think, ridiculous. It's kind of like calling someone a racist just because you have nothing to say. Now then you say people that don't want welfare don't care about poor people. And that's an argument I see a lot of socialists using when they advocate for welfare.
All the fat cat bureaucrats that are walking around, and the military officials with all their medals, and everybody trying to get their part of the welfare and the warfare. And then, of course, stuffing money in the pockets of the politicians that are distributing this money. It's a statist dream come true. It's like free money, free largesse, grants for your community. And you see, it becomes a gigantic grab fest where everybody, the dependency class, the parasitic class, is over there trying to get their dirty little hands on their share of the money. Let me have my share. No, let me have my share. No, that's my share. And they all get this sense that they're entitled to it. They're entitled to live off the fruits of other people's earnings. That's why they call it an entitlement. Because they honestly believe in their minds that they are entitled to your money. And they're fighting for it. They're grabbing for it. But you know what ends up happening? This dependency class starts getting larger and larger, and their wants become more and more voracious. I mean, you talk about greed. I mean, this is the greed class. And what happens is that they run...
People like John McCain, people like Hillary Clinton, people like Barack Obama, who as soon as he broke the record for the fastest run from the White House to Wall Street. The fact that he, as soon as he left the White House, he started making $400,000 speeches to Wall Street executives has to show you something. That these people, Obama doesn't care about hope. He doesn't care about change. Yeah, I can link it for sure. But he doesn't care about hope. He doesn't care about change. Really what he cares about is lining his pockets up with money, and that's why he has a $60 million book deal, which is a record. $60 million book deal. And who was the previous record for a book deal? Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton had the previous record for a book deal. A politician who sent so many people to jail with his criminal justice policies that it's really unforgivable. And then when they try to claim that they're for hope, they're for change, they're for spreading democracy, spreading freedom, they're fighting for human rights, what the fuck are you talking about? Bill Clinton sent thousands of people to jail for non-violent crimes, for victimless crimes. He sent thousands of people to jail, and that's a big reason why a lot of people don't vote for someone like Hillary Clinton, because her husband sent their family members to jail for no reason. There was one guy who got asked, why didn't you vote for Hillary Clinton? And he said, because he sent my brother to jail for 20 years. And that's just a reality. And people are experiencing this every day. But here, let me link this to the chat. Let me know if you got it or not. I'm going to keep playing this. But this is actually Jacob Hornberger. He's running for president in 2020 in the Libertarian ticket. But I'm not exactly sure how well he's going to do. But what he's saying is definitely good. And I think a lot of people need to hear this.
Out of money. They don't have enough money to satisfy the dependency class. And the liberal staters are saying, tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich. But you see, they start figuring out that at some point you don't have any more rich to tax, that they start cratering in on themselves, as has happened in the welfare state in Greece. They say tax the middle class, but you see, they know that the middle class historically has sometimes had revolts and even revolutions over exorbitant taxes. So what they do is they go out and start borrowing the money. And they borrow and they borrow and they borrow to start passing out this largesse. Now let me digress a minute here to tell you about one aspect of these statists. Statists are fascinating people, you know. 40 years ago, they sent 40,000 people of my generation to their deaths, both liberals and conservatives, in this idiotic, stupid, immoral war in Southeast Asia. And there's
Vietnam is actually really similar to what the wars were in Afghanistan and stuff. Vietnam was the longest war in American history until now. Now we're in the longest wars in American history. Vietnam did hold that record, though.
Still proud of it. Some of them still extol it and praise it and so forth, and they still praise and extol Lyndon Johnson, statist par excellence, Richard Nixon, statist par excellence. There's no shame. And notwithstanding the fact that it was all based on lies. I mean, you know, like they made up this attack at the place called the Gulf of Tonkin, and they said, we've been attacked, we've been attacked. And they knew there'd been no attack. But it was all designed to get a resolution to use force.
If you've never heard of the Gulf of Tonkin, look into that. It's a lie that got us into Vietnam.
No declaration of war as the Constitution requires.
Vietnam, which is the same country that was being propped up by the Chinese communists whom we used torture techniques from. Really think about morality, the ethics of people who would use torture techniques that are derived from communist countries that were actually proven not to work because all they did was make people admit to things that they never did.
But a resolution to use force, that sounds kind of familiar, you know, that justified a war that went on and killed 58,000 American men. Well, the rationale they were using is because of communism. They were, oh, communism's horrific. And they were right. I mean, communism is horrific. But they were saying the dominoes will fall, and if we don't sacrifice these men here, the communists will come to America, they'll take over the public schools, they'll teach socialism, you know, it's, you know, as if anything different there, you know. Got Americans teaching them there.
Great point. Americans are teaching American socialism. And us going to Vietnam didn't stop socialism from spreading to the United States. 50,000 people, Americans dying, didn't stop communism from spreading to the United States. The same way, 8,500 people dying in these wars we're in the Middle East is not stopping terrorists from coming here. It's not. If anything, it's creating more terrorists. They hate America because we murdered their family members. And sure, we are killing a lot. There are bombs that do hit real terrorists, really bad people. But if 90% of the people getting hit with these drone strikes are innocent civilians, we're essentially just creating more terrorists that hate America. The same way, when we went to Vietnam, we didn't really help make our case with things like My Lai, like that massacre where Americans just came in and massacred a whole village that was unarmed.
Oh, well, you see, apparently communism's not so bad anymore. Because guess where they got the money to fund not only their welfare state, but also their little imperial enterprises in Iraq and Afghanistan? They went right to the Chinese communists and borrowed the money instead of taxing Americans, because they knew what would happen over here if they did that. This is the same communist regime that was funneling the arms and the weaponry that killed many of these 58,000 American men, and that's where they borrowed the money. I mean, how much more morally despicable can you get than that? And hypocritical. But that's a statist. Or unless perhaps you look at Cuba, where, you know, that's a communist regime. Of course, it's a liberal's dream come true, because everybody's equal, you know, equally destitute. And it's a conservative dream because they have military tribunals there and deny.
I love when people use Cuba as an example for healthcare, where everyone has free healthcare. When you take a look at the hospitals in Cuba, they might have free healthcare, but if you want to call that healthcare, I don't know. I don't think you should be deciding what kind of healthcare we have in America. If you call what Cuba has free healthcare, you don't know what healthcare is. These people are in these hospitals, and they don't. They're dirty. People are getting sick from being in the hospital. If you're going to a hospital and getting sick from the hospital, what the fuck is the point of going to the hospital? That's what Cuban hospitals are like. And of course, you'll hear people like socialists in the socialist belief system, like Bernie Sanders, AOC, that talk about Cuba's health system as if it's a good thing. Oh, look, Cuba, look at these medicines they found. Do you really think anybody in Cuba is getting any of the medicines that they need from this free healthcare system? Nobody's getting anything they need. And this is the lie that they won't tell you. They'll tell you that Cuba has free healthcare, but what they won't tell you is that that healthcare is worse than not having healthcare in America at all.
Trial of due process and no criminal defense attorneys. But you see, apparently communism's not so bad there, even though they've got a 50-year embargo, hoping that someday they're going to succeed in ousting Fidel Castro from power. But you see, apparently communism is not so bad anymore, because every time somebody tries to escape from Cuban communist tyranny, these statists, both liberals and conservatives, attack them on the high seas under the name of immigration controls, and they forcibly repatriate them back into communist tyranny. That's a statist for you. Now, we all know what they're going to do with this debt. And by the way, each of you owe, on average, $40,000 right now in that your average part of that national debt. And it's growing every day.
This video, by the way, is I think from 2010. Yep, 2010. So that $40,000 debt that we all hold is much higher now.
They've got a credit card that they're charging on your account, and it has no limit on it. They're running up the bills every day. They're spending just this year alone $1.4 trillion more than what they're bringing in taxes. That's your debt. A family of 4, you got 2 kids, $160,000. You owe it. Because you see, what's happening is the Chinese communists They know what's going on with this other part of this jugular vein that came into existence in the 1910s. See, the average American, he has no idea. This is the brilliance of the Federal Reserve System. You ask an average American, there's a real reason why governments take control of educational systems. It's because they know the power to mold people's minds when they're children, and that mind remains molded all too often, all through adulthood. And that's what that big battle in Texas is all about over what's going to go into those socialist textbooks down there in the public schools. The liberal statists are fighting the conservative statists, and they're saying, we want our form of statism in these books. Because the average American, you ask him, what causes inflation? He will say, well, golly, grocery stores are causing the inflation. They're raising their prices over there. Or, the service stations, service stations are raising their prices every day. It's that greed, that's what's causing the inflation. We need some price controls on those people. You see? But you see, the Chinese communists know better. Because they got a central bank too. And what they have told the federal government, the U.S. government, is don't even think about cranking up your Federal Reserve printing presses, which they're doing, to pay off this debt. In other words, to default on it, which they've done decade after decade. That's what's funded this machine, the income tax and the Federal Reserve. There's a reason why Americans no longer walk around with silver dimes and silver quarters and silver half dollars. It's because they've debased the currency year after year. And the Chinese communists are saying, don't even think about it. We have loaned you dollars, and we expect to be paid back in full-fledged, full-force, full-value dollars. And if they demand that, you can be darn sure the other creditors are going to demand it. There is a collision coming on the horizon. And my hunch is that the American people are going to rue the day when they permitted these imperial enterprises, Iraq, Afghanistan, and so forth, and permitted their government officials to borrow the money to fund those things from the Chinese communists. But this is a threat we face. It is a threat to our economic liberty, to our financial well-being, to our economic well-being. That's the welfare state. In the middle of this perfect storm of the welfare state and the warfare state, you've got their favorite statist government program, the one that's gone on for, 30, 35 years, the drug war, in which they have brought nothing but death and destruction to masses of people, destroyed lives with this war. And you know what it's all about? It's all about money and power. There's lots of people making money off this thing. There's judges on the take. There's prosecutors on the take. There's law enforcement agents on the take. You got CIA agents running drugs.
Speaking of CIA agents and getting us into war, in Venezuela recently, the CIA, or the media, was trying to blame Venezuelan officials for burning our humanitarian aid that we sent to Venezuelan people. But from people on the ground, and what we later found out, we kind of realized that the CIA burned our humanitarian aid that we sent to Venezuelans to make it look like the regime did it so that the CIA could have a coup in Venezuela, and that so we can justify military intervention unconstitutionally. The same way we're in the Middle East, unconstitutionally. And so the CIA is, like I was saying earlier, the fact that people are even trying to say that we should trust into the intelligence agencies, just because Trump attacked the intelligence agencies, we have to trust the FBI now. We have to trust the CIA now. The CIA. Why would we trust the CIA? If anyone's wondering why we shouldn't trust the CIA, just Google MK Ultra. Just go on CIA.gov, go to their archives, and search MK Ultra. Over 100,000 Americans had their brains turned to mush from CIA experiments. Not all Americans. There were Canadians in there too, so people that weren't even American citizens. And they were signing up for these newspaper ads, for... And the ads wouldn't exactly state what the people were signing up for. And then when people went to get paid for this test experiment, whatever, that was advertised as something very simple, you won't get hurt from. The CIA drugged them with LSD. They used electroshock therapy to try to basically control their mind. They're trying to figure out ways to control people's minds, because at the time, they found out that the Soviet Union was using LSD for interrogations. And so the fact that they can do this to Americans in the past, and then suddenly people are saying we need to trust the CIA, huge red flag. And it's been proven the CIA is behind burning the aid that was sent to Venezuela to help the Venezuelans. And then they tried to blame it on the Venezuelan government. Even the media was peddling this lie until 3 weeks later they were forced to rescind the lie and to say that it was actually the CIA that burned the aid. And these are all facts. You can look this stuff up. So all this interventionism, all this welfare, really it's just destroying America. And I think that's going to be it for today. I appreciate all you that joined. And you can follow me on Instagram at Push Liberty. You can subscribe on YouTube at Push Liberty. Go to any social media, search Push Liberty, and you can find me. And just make sure to subscribe, follow, do whatever. And BitChute is a good website too, because they don't censor people. BitChute won't remove videos that they don't find politically correct. So if you want to follow me on there, that might be a good idea. And thanks for watching. I appreciate it.